Dr. Kiltz, good to see you, sir.
Dr. Chaffee, always amazing to see you. Great strength in the story. We appreciate what you are doing.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Amazing.
You're very welcome. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, everyone. Everyone's working very well as a team. It's a good team effort.
Well, we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Connected. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it.
I've just realized I missed a trick. What we should have done is got the person before to introduce the next person. That would have been quite good.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So well, you can sort of roll it down for the rest of them. Put Dr. Kiltz on the spot, and now he's got to come up with an introduction for whoever's next. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the downside, because you two guys were on reverse, weren't you? You know each other, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. Well, let's get on to Dr. Robert Kiltz. Thank you, Anthony, once again.
You're welcome. Good to see you guys, and enjoy.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah. Have an awesome day.
See ya. Thanks, you too.
So, Dr. Kiltz, would you like to just introduce yourself to the people that don't know you, what you're about, what your expertise is?
Well, my name is Dr. Rob Kiltz, and I'm a fertility specialist. I specialize in helping those that are suffering from fertility issues, can't get pregnant, miscarriages, genetic issues, both medical and surgical treatments. In vitro fertilization is the main thing I practice. I own and run CNY Fertility Centers, which is a large fertility center in America, but we see couples and individuals from all over the globe. I fell into the keto carnivore space about 15 years ago. I've been focusing mostly on carnivore for myself, but I share both avenues. And health and wellness is something that I think is paramount to all of us. And we've been shared the wrong story. The master of messaging has basically given us the wrong story of who and what we are, and that's the cause of our suffering. And like the good book that Dr. Ken Berry's written about, The Lies My Doctor Told Me, realizing that most of us in Western medicine essentially fed, I believe, a lot of lies that lead us down the wrong direction. We've been taught to treat disease with symptom relief, but not getting to the core foundation of the cause of disease. And so my real passion is to get to the core of the cause and help people become their own doctor, practitioner, and leader of their life, instead of wondering and worrying that someone else has to give you numbers and data that may be distracting and completely incorrect. So here I am, fertility doc, upstate New York mostly, but all around the country and the world. And I'm really grateful that you've invited me here, Stephen and Richard. So thank you.
Have you met Richard before?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, let me do the English thing. Robert, this is Richard. Richard, this is Robert.
Rob,
awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Pleasure to meet you. Great. We'll have to get you on the podcast. Yeah, fantastic. Stephen and I, we do a weekly live on a Sunday. Obviously, we've both got our own podcast shows. Obviously, you've been on Stephen's, I believe, but it's yeah, fantastic. We're trying to spread the word as best we can, and really appreciate you coming on. So thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Well, yeah. Again, my pleasure. I feel like I already know you, Stephen, for a number of years now. And again, really inspired by what everyone's doing in this community. Very positive, sharing ideas that are radical. But I think we're seeing tremendous amount of improvement in people's health and wellness.
Yeah. And I think Richard will be right up your street, Rob, because he is absolutely on it with the science. I mean, really on it with the science. We could have done a 24-hour live stream with just Richard answering one question. So let's do a nice broad question for you, Mr. Kiltz. Let's do this. Why carnivore? Why did you what drove you to this crazy way of eating?
A crazy concept that carnivore cures. And it really, so much of life is accidental. And for me, I'm a fertility specialist. I actually introduced a lot of Eastern medicine into my practice: meditation, prayer, yoga, acupuncture, massage, about 20 years ago. And many of my patients were leaving the fertility treatments because it was too stressful. So anything we can do to reduce stress was so important. And then many of them were getting pregnant on a diet called paleo. And essentially, I didn't know much about nutrition because none of us know anything about nutrition, I've come to believe. But I suffered also from arthritis, psoriasis, bowel bleeding, hemorrhoids, kidney stones, ADHD, OCD, depression. As a child, I had severe migraines and bowel problems, and I was uncorrigible. I was kicked out of school in a gang, couldn't read, and my father in jail. I throw that out there a little bit because it's like the training grounds of life. Nothing bad, all part of the process. But as I began to learn more about paleo and then keto, I met Maria Emmerich, and we did a lot of things together and still do. I learned and questioned the fuel for the Ferrari. And I know as Richard talks a little bit about the fuel is ketones, but the fuel ultimately is only fat. And we burn fat, we don't burn sugar, we don't burn proteins. And as I dug deep into the science and realized how wrong we were, I went carnivore about 13 years ago when I watched a guy on some video and the guy said, I eat meat, I don't exercise, and he was ripped and he looked great and felt great. And I was like, that is the one for me. So I was paleo, Atkins and paleo and keto. And then when I found carnivore, I was like, wow. And 1 month, all those diseases went away. I've never felt better. My brain energy and my overall energy is amazing. I sleep well. And I pretty much stick to bacon, eggs, butter, beef, and salt, occasionally my ice cream. I've been off coffee for a year, although I've had about 5 cups in the last 3 months. I have a little bit from time to time, but this nutritional way of living eliminates so many diseases, gives you the strength to be the lion and the master of your life instead of being the slave to the story, which is basically slaughtering all of us with so much sickness. And so many of my patients, they don't do a carnivore, all of them. Some do keto, some don't. But it's all part of the process. My job as a doctor is give people options of treatment and ideas that they might go, and many of them, so many people I don't even see, I never hear from, but I hear stories. Hey, my friend had a baby because they did your diet. They've been suffering for 13 years, no pregnancies, no children, and voila, they went carnivore or ketovore and bingo, a baby. So I think we need to realize that our diet is actually the cause of disease, and a healthy diet is a labeled word that may not be true. So we have to very much watch the words that we use. So I use this way of living for myself, but for my patients, my community, my family, everyone I run to. I'm just a broken record. It's all I talk about. So, this is our lives.
Yeah. And you're very inspirational. And, you do a live. Do you do a live on Instagram every day?
5 a.m. Monday through Friday, typically Eastern time. So I get you guys get in a little later. That's all good. But people maybe, in between, that's a little harder. US, the West Coast is a little hard. But yeah, every day I do Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and I actually do my Mighty Tribe. Everyone's welcome. We just talk about positivity, and we talk about faith. We talk about food. Faith, food, and fitness. Those are the sort of the 3 pillars of my focus.
Yeah. Richard, do you want to dive in with the question, as you've not met Dr. Kiltz before?
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, the whole ethos, fantastic. It's, and I think the work that you were doing is brilliant. It just further adds weight, doesn't it, to the fact that, a conversation that Stephen and I had yesterday in regards to, the progression of beginning a ketogenic journey through low carb, then maybe going dirty keto, then standard, then clean, then becoming carnivore, and the different variations of carnivore, and how people in the community will clamp down on others for maybe not being keto or carnivore. But it's a progression, and I think you have to work with the individual. We're all different, and this is a convo that we went through yesterday, isn't it? The incremental approach seems to be the most beneficial over time, rather than the step change approach where you just get someone to cut out everything We see benefits from, Stephen mentioned a client of his who, is predominantly dirty keto, but has lost stupid amounts of weight, reversed almost every illness and disease that he suffers from. That could only be a positive thing. Yes, he may still consume foods that we don't agree with, but those results are positive. And I think we need to, celebrate that. We need to support that. But I think what I try to do, and I think and Stephen would agree as well, between the two of us, we try to promote the options to people, and we try to explain the differences between the lifestyles so you can make an educated decision. If you don't want to be carnivore and you just want to go low carb or keto, these are the benefits, fantastic. But the further you go down this rabbit hole, the more benefits that you're going to see. Myself included, I've been ketogenic for 10, 11 years, of which I'd class myself as being carnivore for 4 to 5. But even only recently, have I removed or reduced, I should say, coffee, the same as you. I still consume coffee occasionally. And we're live for 24 hours. I'm sure I'm going to be consuming a few later on today. But again, I understand the damage that causes. It's not something I consume a lot of, and I believe most of the damage comes from the acrylamide, which is accumulative. So again, used sparingly, is going to see benefit. But that's a long way of coming around to my question. Apologies, I do tend to get carried away. So look, we're told to consume certain foods, polyphenols, for example, curcumin, which is found in turmeric, resveratrol in berries, quercetin in onions, catechins in tea. Curcumin and turmeric and spinach contain oxalates. They cause DNA damage, hyperoxaluria, which leads to hypothyroidism and even autism in children. And comes back to damaging, the endocrine system, which is, something you're a professional in. So what would you say to people who are, searching for these foods that contain flavonoids and resveratrol? In my experience, flavonoids, isoflavones, they're digestive inhibitors. They block the absorption of vitamin C. They cause a reduction in net protein utilization. They cause infertility, poor sperm count. Because they are endocrine disruptors, they block thyroid peroxidase, which we need to make thyroid hormone by activating the 17B estradiol receptor. An increase in estrogen, which can lead to hypothyroidism in women, gynecomastia in men, and flavonoids, also increase inflammatory markers like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, I believe, tumor necrosis alpha. These are things that we are told to consume, eat our 5 or 7 fruit or veg a day. Yet they are laden with these, what I believe to be toxic chemicals. So what would you say to people who are searching for these flavonoids and these resveratrols and quercetins and catechins and etc.? Apologies, that's my long approach to a question.
I'm just gonna show you this, and it might be backwards. I don't know.
That's the short answer to my very long question.
Okay. Occam's razor. Occam's razor is simple. Answer is the one. Science is great, but quite often the story is so complicated that it really misses the mark for most humanity. We can't understand it, but it's a marketing message that you need all these things. But we know that is not true because the dose makes the poison. Basically, small amounts of something might make you feel good, just like a little bit of heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, or caffeine. But cyanide, my friend, in small amounts may kill you quickly. This is the idea that most humanity doesn't understand, is that we're marketing a bunch of drugs to make you feel better from the chronic exposure of the plants and lean meat. Lean meat is deadly for us. Fatty meat is the critical part of the carnivore diet or any keto diet, in my opinion. But ultimately, the message is complicated because someone that we believe has stature in the community because they're really so bright, because they have a degree from some major university, and or they've been given accolades because of the company they own, and market a message that ultimately is deadly. It's like going down in a carbon fiber tank to the bottom of the ocean. We know it's deadly. And then when people say things with the utmost of absolute knowledge, but they ultimately are making them a story. And again, I'm telling this story also, by the way. Don't believe me. Don't take what I say at face value. You've got to do your own research and experiment, but there's only one experiment to do, and that's on you. You see, science is studying thousands, but giving you an average, not realizing that the spread is humongous. So just because you're not that average number, you think, oh my God, I'm diseased. Just like folate numbers. I was listening to you with Dr. Chaffee. Again, we get caught up on a number and a thought, and the worrying brain just goes right down the rabbit hole and can't realize that the majority of these things, no animal in the universe is like, let's see, what's my folic acid level, or what are those toxins? But many organisms and animals know the signs of a deadly plant or a dangerous organism, right? We have been masterfully manipulated in order to sort of wipe away maybe those natural instinctual things that say, don't touch that. And now basically the constant marketing of flavonoids or antioxidants. What's an antioxidant? I have no idea what an antioxidant is. Again, because it's a scientific term that some really intelligent marketing person wrote this story. Do you know that most scientific papers have to go through an editorial to make sure they kind of like sound like someone's going to read them and believe them? It's if you just want to get the straight numbers, you'd probably look at it and say, no, wait a minute, these numbers don't match up to your story. But we don't get all the numbers. We just get, again, it's back to Ansel Keys, the 7 country studies. It kind of wasn't really true. So the whole point here is that no animal, no organism, no plant wants to be eaten. That's number one, right? And so you don't need those drugs, which may be helpful from plants, by the way, to make you feel better in a moment because of sickness or cancer. And we're using drugs that heal you, but they also are at risk of causing a secondary disease or cancer. But we're like, really? And so I would say that you just don't need those things of any significance or frequency. But remember, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, caffeine, and in a multitude of mushrooms and psilocybin and ayahuasca are being utilized by people thinking they're good and okay for you. Well, they're highly addictive. And we know, it, again, back to plants and the sugars and all those chemicals you mentioned may be addictive chemicals that, like, I love coffee, so good for us. Is coffee good for us? It makes us feel good. I even like it. Okay. But I really minimize or eliminate it now because I realize the story is a lie to get you to spend your money on something you don't need, which likely cause another disease, which you're going to need more money because the cost of healthcare is only going up. And so many people in this globe do not have health care. But again, they don't have health care for the disease treatments that are caused by the diet and the flavonoids and the antioxidants that we say are good for us. It's a lie.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I interrupted in the middle there, but I wanted to say what you said was brilliant. And I had an actual practical example yesterday, because when we moved into this property, this makes sense, Rob. Okay. The roof was leaking and everything. And only yesterday, when it was dry, could we fix everything. We put this varnish down on the floor. And now our puppy, right, normally eats with us. He eats in the garden. We eat in the garden. And because we fixed this room, we thought, well, let's eat in here. The varnish smell was horrendous, I think. I've got a better sense of smell than Jane. Our dog would not eat his food in that chemical-laden environment. You know, he's got a lovely duck neck to eat. He's raw carnivore, by the way. We literally took it out of that room, put it in the garden, straight to it. So they know. They don't need a tracker. They don't need, hey, this is good for you. They know. We put something on his plate, and he will just eat it if it's good. And if we put something that's got plants in it, strangely enough, if we got some food the other day, we said we were raw carnivore and feeding the dog raw carnivore, and there's plants in it. Didn't want to know. He did not want to know. So yeah, that's great. Go on then, Richard. Do another. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go on.
Varnish comes from what? Plants.
I don't know. Yes.
It's straight away
yes.
a plant product. And so again, all of these products from plants are there to protect the plant, to either attract or repel certain organisms for its life cycle.
Yes. Go on, Rich. Did you want to do a follow-up? Don't forget,
Yeah,
we've only got 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I'll keep this. I'll keep this short.
I'm good.
It's we'll have to do Carnivore 24 round 2, I think, wouldn't we? But yeah, I mean, it's just to come back to what we made, the statement that the Rob made in regards to antioxidants. You know, antioxidants activate the NRF2 pathway. They're in fact pro-oxidants, and the NRF2 pathway is an oxidative stress pathway. You know, the same pathway is activated with the ingestion of things like arsenic, lead, mercury. You know, this will give the same antioxidant effect as consuming vegetables. So if you are to reside to the fact that vegetables have an antioxidant effect and it's positive for us, then you must also admit that consuming arsenic, mercury, or lead is good for us, tobacco smoke. And we know it isn't. This is the same outcome from vegetables as consuming these toxic products. This whole thing about antioxidants is the biggest load of rubbish that has ever been, probably second only to cholesterol. These are not antioxidants. I believe that, you know, we can, the argument would be for something called homeostasis, the effect of homeostasis, which is where we put something that's a little bit toxic in and we have a positive result. Now, there's two types of homeostasis: molecular homeostasis and environmental. Environmental would be the likes of cold water therapy and heat treatment, which I'm a believer in. You know, I've looked at the science. I believe that cold water dipping carries positive results. But these molecular homeostasis effects from consuming foods, to me, and I'm sure Robert will jump in on this, is nothing more than a marketing ploy by the food industry, and it's rampant. And I still hear it within the keto and carnivore community. Antioxidants, this is one of the biggest load of rubbish that we've ever been spouted. But there we are. That's my 2 minutes of
the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology has a journal they put out. And last year they had an expert review of nutrition for pregnant and lactating women. It was mostly a plant-based, lean meat, no red meat or very minimal. And it focused and also said that red wine is okay. And so you got to wonder about the experts that are basically pushed and moved by some marketing money, I suspect, or just like we used to recommend tobacco and as a physician, that it had medicinal properties for people. And again, we're here's a little bit of alcohol. How do you like it? Wow, this is really good. Okay, let's have 10 of those now. Whoa, I don't feel so good anymore. So again, a little bit makes you feel okay or makes you feel good, but a lot. Have 20 cups of coffee in one sitting. Espresso, by the way. Will that make you feel good? My friends, we know that it won't, but you're right. How do you feel on this? Science is a lot of how do you feel? Wow, I feel great after taking that. That's great. Wow. Let me mark that down. Feels great, must be good for you. We know that's not true. And that's our challenge in life. And again, the science is really, I love science. I'm a scientist. I went on this journey to figure out, okay, glucose somehow has been labeled as our energy source, right? But type 1 diabetics has no insulin. They have high glucose levels and they lose weight quickly, right? They become skinny, right? And then a type 2 diabetic, right? They're fed all of this, it's sugar, and yet their insulin and sugar levels go up. Something's wrong. We call it insulin resistance, right? Well, the question came to me as, well, what is insulin resistance? Is it the insulin that's a problem? Is it the cell that's the problem? And I finally found this term called hepatogenous diabetes. Have you guys ever heard of hepatogenous diabetes? I had never heard of it. And if I'd never heard of it, and yet, it's not recognized by the American Diabetic Association nor the World Health Organization. that it is likely that insulin resistance is actually a liver disease. That simply the liver cannot function to do its job. And then the question is, well, what is the liver's job? What would you say the liver's job is? What do most people say? Toxic, it removes toxins, right? Well,
yeah.
What disease can you name that it doesn't remove a toxin? You can't, because that's not its job. Its job is to make fat. And it makes fat so good. We see it in the world. And it makes fat out of two things, amino acids and simple sugars. And it requires one thing to do that, insulin. Insulin's job is to make fat, not to put sugar into cells. It's to make fat in the liver, because if you have liver damage significant, you will become skinny and you will become a type 2 diabetic. But no one talks about that. And so if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of understanding the human body, ketones are just a little bit of another distraction, by the way. We burn fatty acids that come from fat. You can't take glucose in the cytoplasm and make pyruvate and acetyl-CoA and then think you're going to get your ATP produced. It doesn't work that way. You must make fat in the liver via insulin out of amino acids and sugars. Because if you think about it, the majority of the diet in America or in the world is a plant-based, lean meat diet. Most people either cut it away, but our cooking methods for meat actually remove the fat. It's cooked on a grill, or it's boiled for hours, or in an oven, and all the grease goes away, and the majority of humanity does not eat fat. And really, if you want to simplify all of this, it might not being a carnivore. It still may be simply being an omnivore. You eat plants and meat, but you must eat the fat. And that's the fact that we're missing, I think, in all of this. Now, I do believe that significant plants tend to be part of our damage, but that's a hard one for people to sort of get in their brains, that it may be as simple as that story.
And Rob, that's why you're here, because I love the way you think outside the box. I think carnivores are a subset of people. I think being a carnivore means you look outside the box and you're prepared to do something that's not generally accepted. When you talked about the liver there, that is something, I mean, I'm a specialist practitioner in diabetes and I'd never heard that term. So at 59, this old dog has learned a new trick, because you know what? When this 24 hours is over, I'm not going to bed. I'm going to look that up first. I'm going to go and learn about that, because I think that's one of the things I love about this space, and I love about you and Rich. We'll learn. You know, if something goes against what we believe or what we think, we don't go, no, it can't be true. We're like, oh, that. If it makes sense, you know, I think that was brilliant. Thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. Well, you think about it. All right. So sugar is your fast energy source and fat is your slow energy source. Ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Is it true?
Well, not really, is it? I mean, it
can't be true. Why would the mitochondria, the TCA cycle, say, well, wait a minute, we're going to take the glucose now and use glucose for energy, but you got a shitload of acetyl-CoA and fatty acids all over, and you have short chain, long chain, and medium chain fatty acids everywhere. And why would you ever say, I'm going to take glucose and I'm going to use it for energy right now? And then later on, when your glucose levels are down, now, have you ever measured and found someone's glucose levels are down after a big race really fast? Nope.
No, they're up.
Nope, they're normal. It's not true.
Which is what we did recently, wasn't it? Yeah, I did a race. Yeah.
And so again, even in the keto carnivore space, we keep on saying sugar is your energy. And the brain requires sugar for energy. It does not. It does not. Now glucose is critical, along with mannose and N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylgalactosamine, are critical for glycosylation, which no one in the carnivore keto space talks about. Glycosylation, which again, we talk about proteins and making proteins, but do you know that the majority of proteins are glycosylated? And if they're not glycosylated, do you know that you will die or be diseased? And there are hundreds of diseases caused by abnormal glycosylation. Remember, glycation is the abnormal binding of sugars onto everything and anything. And glycosylation is the normal binding of a sugar, again, a sugar, which is critical in our body, by the way, but never in our diet. That's the amazing part. And really, when we talk about carbohydrates, we should simplify it because that's too complicated. Plants and or animals. Those are our kind of choices of what to eat. We never have a requirement to eat a plant, but they do taste good and feel good, don't they?
Yeah.
But when you learn the goodness of eating that fatty meat, that organ meat, the bone marrow, the bone broth, again, if you want to go to all sorts of fancy brain and liver and thymus and kidney and heart, go for it. Is it required? I don't know, but I enjoy them. And I imagine if I enjoy them, that means I've convinced myself they're required. But ultimately, what's our real requirement, right? We will die without air, water, amino acids, and fatty acids. And really, those are the simplicities of it. Even when we talk about mineral deficiencies, have you ever seen someone with a mineral deficiency? Have you ever measured a mineral deficiency? Nope.
No, and I was going to say that in phlebotomy, I very rarely see it. I can't even remember seeing it.
Well, you might have seen it in sick patients who have a really low potassium or calcium elevation. But again, you know, we say, well, I think I'm mineral deficient. Well, again, you've been fed a story that makes you think something, but maybe it's not so true. So that's why it's really important that we get a chance to really be open to ideas that are radical and different. And maybe, again, don't believe me, don't believe most of everyone out there, but go out there and dig deep and do the research to and then question everything. Question everything. Hepatogenous diabetes, because liver failure patients all have type 2 diabetes, yet they're all skinny and have no fat on their body. They're cachectic. And the question is why?
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. It's what's really strange is one of the things I often talk about in my personal training is the minimal, the finite amount of glucose we've got stored, and yet we've got days worth of fat energy on us. Even if you're a lean athlete, you can go further and further. But Rob, that was brilliant. I can't believe I'm saying this in a 24-hour span. We haven't got enough time. So we need to get but we've got Ben now from the Big Fat Challenge. So I've tried to link everybody up so it goes from one conversation to the next. So Dr. Robert Kiltz, thank you so much for giving us half an hour of your time.
Stephen, Richard, my pleasure. Ben, you're
an absolute pleasure.
These guys are amazing. The story, 24 hours, kick ass. So remember, fat is the critical food for the Ferrari, and we're Ferraris. So eat like one, you'll feel like one, and be the lion. God bless you guys. Have an awesome one.
Absolute gentleman. Thank you, Doctor. Absolute pleasure. Take care, man.
I'm going to enjoy it. Take care.
Take care, man.
Now, there you go, Ben. The Big Fat Challenge. You see? The Big Fat Challenge. You've just been given a perfect baton. So do you want to just talk about your Big Fat Challenge?
Yeah, well, we're basically trying to educate the world in a very simple but apparently radical message, which is that fat is your body's ideal fuel, and you've been fed a whole load of nonsense about it. Really that simple. So it's basically what we say to people is give it 90 days. switch to, I mean, I like to call it like the manufacturer's recommended fuel. If anyone's ever put diesel into a petrol car and you get, half a mile down the road and it goes gunk, gunk, and you end up on the side of the road with your head in your hands going, oh no, what have I done? Waiting for somebody to come out and try and rescue your engine. But the difference is, and Rob just kind of alluded to it now, is this difference between acute toxins and chronic toxins. A small amount of cyanide can bump you off immediately, but the problem is when it comes to diet, that the toxins that we're taking in through excess carbohydrates and through things like seed oils are chronic. They build up over time and they kill you slowly, but they do make great customers for the pharmaceutical industry at the same time. So it's a very good investment if you're a director of a corporation.
Yeah,
perfect
absolutely.
Business model.
I think I've been rude here and very un-English because I haven't introduced you. I don't know if Richard knows Phil or Ben, but guys,
nice to meet you both. Nice to meet you, Phil and Ben.
Hi, Richard, good to meet you too. Yes, I know we haven't met before.
Were you at the PhD conference in Sheffield? PhD conference.
Yes.
I saw you there. I don't think we spoke.
Brilliant. Did we speak? No. No. But it was such a fantastic event. But the only downside was the break time didn't leave an awful lot of time for networking. So you travel to these events to speak to people that you've met online, and I ended up not speaking or conversing with very many people at all, unfortunately. But still a fantastic event.
There was comedy lunch though, wasn't there? That was strange. we had quinoa and melange too, and a bucket full of boiled beans of some sort. Very bizarre.
Yeah. So I fasted. It strangely enough, I waited for a steak later on in the evening. But
no, Ben stole all the salmon and brought it to us. He pretended he was very official and filled up a couple of big boxes of salmon, and we ran away.
Very un-English. I jumped the queue and went round the wrong side of the table, Stephen, as well. So no one's English here.
So just for the broader audience, by the way, we went to a conference in Sheffield, and the guest speakers were people like Sean Baker and Jen Unwin, David Unwin, some really good people, Ben Bickman. And the lunch that Phil refers to was fit for vegans. That's about it. I mean, I went out to a local butcher's and found a bag of chicken legs for about £4. So that was great. Cooked, obviously.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have eaten that when I was a vegetarian, what they were giving there. It was really weird. It was like storage boxes. It wasn't even something in like a hot plate or something like that. But Sophia Clements, she had some nice bison sausages from the Eskimo kitchen. She went back to the hotel and got some for us, and they were delicious. So that tided us over the other day, because we nicked the salmon one day and then expected that to the next day because they promised, but there wasn't. But I'm moaning, but it was great. I mean, it was great to see all those people there and people that haven't actually met in person before. It was very cool.
It was great, Phil. Now, just quickly for Richard and everybody else watching, but mainly for Richard, can you just give him a real brief bit about what you did and what caused you to look at diet and how you resolved your issues?
Oh, well, you see, my expertise is being an absolute idiot. And this is what I've done mostly over my life with diet. And I was vegetarian and vegan for, sort of 30 odd years, and even wrote books on vegetarian eating. And then I got really sick with full-on psoriatic arthritis in 2010 and had to figure it out. And ended up writing a book in about 2014 called Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. And I still hadn't quite discovered carnivore. I was very, very close, but I pretty much got it sorted. But then in 2015, I went carnivore, and everything's been great until I cocked something up last year. And then I managed to get out of trouble in 3 months, whereas it took me about 3 years last time because I knew what to do this time. But this is a warning. I've just done an episode with Anthony Chaffee on his channel that isn't released yet, going really into what I did wrong. And it doesn't take much. when you've got autoimmunity in your past. You know, for me, it was a lot of other factors outside of diet, but, you know, being a bit of having a bit of a rock and roll lifestyle and traveling around playing too many festivals and misbehaving. But I had, all it needed was some dairy, some eggs, some pork and some chicken, because it's easier to get on the road. And I really screwed myself up. I mean, here's an example of it. And I had a CRP in November or December, I can't remember, of 192. I mean, I was really proud of my 82 CRP back in the day, you know, before I wrote the book. But this was horrific. I brought it down, and I think about 3 weeks later, I had another test, and it was 19, and I haven't done it since then. It's fine now, I'm out of it. But it was a horrific winter, and I wanted to say that, you know, all of the sort of carnivore advice and whatever does change when you're autoimmune. You need to be a hell of a lot more strict. And for me, it's fatty beef and lamb. And I can probably take some other stuff short term, but I caned it a bit last year. And I hasten to add, I didn't eat any plants. Didn't even take plants to set me off. But there I was. I'm supposed to be this arthritis guru online. I was stuck on the sofa and wasting away, lost 3 stone. And yeah, it was, you know, I'd like to talk about it now because it's a good warning for people who are autoimmune, because it's a whole different ball game when you are. So it's fatty beef and lamb for you guys. Don't deviate.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. People think carnivore is the cure-all for everything. And actually, you're right to talk about food, but there's still environmental issues as well. You know, this is sad to say, the only thing I'm worried about doing a 24-hour live stream is 24 hours looking at a screen. You know, I don't think that's good for me personally, not getting outside, not touching my little doggy, you know, my little puppy, because that de-stresses me. Seeing my wife, which sort of stresses me. And, you know, it's
you could strap them both on. All right.
But let's give Ben a little bit of a center stage as well to just talk about his personal journey.
Yeah, well, mine's far less interesting than Phil's, I'm afraid. My wife and I moved into this big house about 10, 11 years ago, and with a couple of acres of garden, and I got really, really into no-dig gardening, and thought it would be a great idea to suck loads of carbon out of the air by building soil and stuff like that. I designed and built my own greenhouse here, and that then took me to a bunch of conferences and seminars and stuff like that, like the Oxford Real Farming Conference and stuff run by the Sustainable Food Trust. And I started hearing people talking about the importance of ruminant animals, and not just for the soil, not just for building soil, but also for health. And they were talking about things I'd never heard about before, like DHA and conjugated linoleic acid and stuff like that. And I thought, that's interesting. So there's people talking about how you've got to eat meat, because I, like everybody else, I was brought up with this amazing myth, which was that fruits and vegetables are the healthy option. They are the healthiest food that there is. And this came as a big surprise to me. So, because I am an explorer, you know, I've done all kinds of things in my life. I start a new project about every 45 minutes, really, and I get a new passion. But really, fundamentally, when I look back with the benefit of hindsight, my life's been about trying to figure out what it looks like to be a happy, healthy, fulfilled human being walking upon the earth. That's kind of it. So that then took me to social media, and I found Phil's Facebook group, 100% Carnivore and Beyond, and got to know Phil, and then the rest is history. And then about 3 years later, here we are, trying to spread the good word that you should fuel your body with fat instead of carbs.
Yeah, and I think the yin and yang between you two is evident, and it's great coming in. I've come to a couple of your campfire meetings, which you call them on Facebook, which is just so laid back and relaxed, you know, and Ben comes with all the sensible stuff and Phil just makes you laugh. It's really good. But I've just saw Dr. Chaffee is still watching, and he's saying that you were brilliant, Phil. So that's good to know. So Richard,
right? Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to chat to you.
So, Richard, you've not met these two guys. You got any questions for them about their big fat challenge or their?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to something that Phil said. You know, it again, as you say, when we say the carnivore cure was all, you know, it is to do with specific conditions, because there are certain foods within the carnivore community that will affect people who suffer with autoimmune issue. You know, cheese and eggs, you know, dairy, even A2 dairy can be problematic. Certain types of fish. So as Phil rightly says, you know, you know, beef is the key for me. I do deviate occasionally. I don't suffer so severely with the autoimmune issues that I used to. But certainly you will see people gravitating into this sort of lifestyle who will be consuming meat, eggs, fish and cheese and still suffering with certain conditions. But it comes back to what we mentioned earlier about these incremental changes, and not everybody fits into the same box. I'm what I'd regard as being strict carnivore, but I also understand that not everybody wants to or can live the way that I do. And when I look at my journey, you know, I began low carb, and then I became dirty keto, and all through accident initially, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew the bread bloated me. I don't know if you guys know much about my story, but and I'll get through this really quickly. I won't bore you too much with it, but I used to be clinically obese and type 2 diabetic. I suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines would make me blind. And in my mid to late 20s, I could barely walk up the stairs without stopping or being severely out of breath. Super long story short, I cut out bread, began my low carb journey, gravitated into keto. And in the UK, keto didn't exist. You know, 10 years ago, nobody knew anything about it. So the information was very scarce. And what was available was misinformation, I believe. You know, I like many, I gravitated to YouTube, found people like Dr. Berg who were pushing stupid amounts of, you know, plants every day. And I fell into that category. Same as Ben, I began growing my own vegetables and things. And yes, I became fitter and healthier. But this improved further as I gravitated into a more carnivore-based lifestyle about 4 to 5 years ago. And basically, long story short, 4 to 5 years after beginning my journey, I went on to become European champion at a professional level in men's physique bodybuilding. So I went from being unable to walk up the stairs to being #1 in Europe through changing my lifestyle. I'm not genetically gifted. If you look at pictures of my father, who died unfortunately 2 years ago from heart complications, you can see that I was on that trajectory. I was on that path of being severely obese and riddled with all sorts of illness and diseases. And I changed that through the food that I consumed. But it is important just to circle back to the fact that, you know, we are all on our own journey. And I do support anybody who begins their journey, whether it be low carb, dirty keto. You know, Stephen mentioned a story yesterday in regards to one of his clients who was received massive benefits from living a dirty keto lifestyle. And that's fantastic, as long as people understand that there's always a better option. The further you gravitate down this rabbit hole, the more benefit that's going to come. And this is something that I've noticed personally, the deeper that I've gone into becoming carnivore. And, you know, as such, reducing and removing things like A2 milks and foods that contain casein. I seem to get on very well with eggs. They don't seem to be problematic for me. But other clients who I work with who live carnivore lifestyle and deemed to be strict will still suffer with issues, and they'll question why. But so just circling back to that, we are all individuals. And if you are suffering with severe autoimmune issues, you know, as Phil rightly says, it's, you know, keep it simple. You know, red meat is the way to go. And that's predominantly how I live.
Yeah, the amazing story there, man. Well done. Yes, whenever I get clients who, well, I get them a lot because I've got all these carnivore groups and the YouTube channel and whatever. And when I get clients, they say carnivore's not working, it's always down to either chicken, pork, dairy, or eggs, particularly egg whites. And pretty much every time it's that. But also I deal with all the other things. You know, once you get the symptoms out the way with a good sort of PKD type diet. I'll explain that in a sec if listeners don't know. But as soon as you get the symptoms out the way, then there's everything else, you know, like we deal with in the Big Fat Challenge, all the other ancestral disconnects. I'm a big fan of Jack Cruz, who's a friend of mine and did the foreword to my book. And you know, he's just saying, you stop being a diet guru and be a light guru. Stop it. Doesn't matter what you eat as long as you get enough sun. Well, you know, people always have these sort of areas of expertise, and you can pick from all of them, right? I mean, I did I would really, if anybody's watching this who's autoimmune, please go and have a look at my channel and see the interview I did recently with Dr. Sophia Clements from Paleomedicina, because I asked specific questions that somebody who is actually autoimmune would ask. And I think a lot of people, she's been interviewed a lot of times, but nobody's quite done that, you know, by other docs and podcasters and whatever. But I really wanted to go deep on that. And I think she's going to really piss a few people off with her views on dairy. I did a little video where Ben and I were wandering around the Peak District with her as well on that, where she says raw dairy is worse than pasteurized dairy. And this will annoy a lot of people, I'm sure, who have that as a sacred cow. But I understand, I think, what she's saying there, that more of the growth factors are intact in raw milk. And so down the line, there could be more problems with, you know, unusual cell replication. Whereas pasteurized milk will give more initial issues because they messed up the whole sort of enzyme content and whatever. And so that'll give more immediate issues, whereas raw dairy won't. And so I would say that anybody who wants to sort of suddenly start shouting, which they have done on my YouTube channel a bit at Sophia for saying that, go and have a listen. And there's some very interesting stuff on there. Because, you know, that whole autoimmune side is what I'm kind of focused on. And I found that I had to look at everything. Some people fix it with carnivore diet. I didn't, not even with a PKD diet completely. I had to look into all the emotional stuff, the grounding, the light, the EMFs, everything really. And that's how we've become disconnected from our ancestral heritage. And that's what really the Big Fat Challenge is all about. Not just, you know, the primary goal of getting people onto fats rather than horrible plant carbohydrates, but also, you know, seeing all the other ways that we've become stressed when further we get away from our ancestral heritage. Ben?
Yeah. Just kind of jumping on what Richard was saying as well, and what Phil's just shared, that one of the things that we teach, because fundamentally, what we're helping to do is to help coach people from the transition from the SAD, you know, the shitty average diet, through to something that's appropriate. I think we do all have, I mean, there's so many myths about it. One of the big myths is everyone's different and there is not one ideal diet for humanity. Well, that's not really true. I mean, it would make us unique amongst the entire animal kingdom if it were true. And things like the blood type diet. We were on a show yesterday and people kept saying, what about the blood type diet? Absolute nonsense, right? But our circumstances are different, right? So Phil has had to go, and, you know, Richard's had to go a lot stricter than, say, I do, because, you know, several times a week I'll have chips fried in tallow, and I'll cope perfectly well with that because I didn't ruin my gut. And one of the things that we coach people a lot on the Big Fat Challenge is we really want to drive it home that apart from the fact that there's not one type of carnivore either. You know, a carnivore is an animal that gets the majority of its calories from eating other animals, and not necessarily every single calorie, right? But one of the things that we really try and drill home to people is there's nothing wrong with putting on body fat. It's actually an essential evolutionary survival trait. There's nothing wrong with eating some berries and some nuts and even some grass seeds in season in a Paleolithic context, because it helps you to lay down body fat and up the insulin and everything else, like Rob was saying. The problem is because our bodies are extremely good at detoxifying. But the thing is, in the traditional kind of solar cycle, you take on all these like high deuterium foods, higher sugars, higher lectins, all this kind of stuff in the summertime and the autumn time. But then you'd be kind of fasting throughout the winter, and you'd be detoxifying, you'd be peeing all this stuff out every day during the winter. And so you've got this kind of yin yang flow going on. But what people do today on the SAD is they're guzzling a half gallon of high fructose corn syrup when they go to the cinema, and you know, munching down fruits that have been flown around the world all year round, and high sugar and everything made out of seed oils. And you're just literally massively overwhelming your body's ability, your body's incredible ability to get rid of environmental toxins by just giving it an absolute tsunami of filth. That's the problem. It's not that we can't deal with these things. It's just that there's no way we can deal with them in that kind of quantity, and no wonder people's health collapses because of it.
Yeah, spot on. Jack Kruse has a lovely phrase, doesn't he? That if the food that's going into your mouth doesn't match the light that's going into your eyes, there's going to be mitochondrial disruption. And that's just a fancy way, really, of saying that just, eat locally and seasonally, what you would have done probably more than 10,000 years ago, wherever you live, and you'll be all right. You might not need to go fully carnivore, but, here where I am and where Ben is, sort of quite a way up in England towards the north, we wouldn't in the winter have been able to find any plant foods. And so what on earth did we do? This is the thing that amuses me about the vegans, where I think, how successful would they have been, before agriculture to go on a quinoa hunt in Scotland in December?
I'm going foraging this afternoon. I'm a forager, right? My wife is a forager. She teaches foraging courses. There's no way we could feed ourselves in this lovely kind of gentle climate that we've got here in nature without animal products. We haven't got hope in hell. We're hopefully going out to get some mushrooms this afternoon. But no, it's nonsense.
I'll just say, I'm actually an animal lover, which people don't seem to think you can be on this way of eating. And I was watching a channel where they were studying animals' behavior, and they put a load of bananas, and they peeled some of them. Some were green, some were ripe, and they stuck them in the forest, and they had these fantastic cameras strapped to trees. And they genuinely thought that it wasn't a carnivore channel, it was an animal channel looking at their behavior. And the researchers genuinely thought we'd put this big stack of bananas on and we will get loads of animals coming in to eat them. 4 days later, I will take my hat off to their honesty, not one bit of banana had been eaten. And they had the footage of all these, and see, raised eyebrows, I'm open to everything. So to me, me and Ben, we live in the same sort of part of England. There is no way on earth we could go out and find a banana ever, right? So that's not appropriate for, if we did have no air travel, if this is where we were born or where we'd traveled to and settled many, generations ago, we'd never have eaten a banana. Certainly not a modern banana with all this high level of sugar. So I think that's the other thing when you're talking about what's good for us to eat. Even if you think, well, I'm still going to be vegetarian, and I'm going to eat all my fruits, that isn't appropriate, because they're all hybrid. Apples in the supermarket are at least a year since they were picked. So we're not eating anything that's particularly natural, even though it looks lovely. It looks natural. But
Stephen, bananas are paleo. Don't you know that? It's so funny, isn't it? They go,
the animals didn't know, though.
Okay. You see it in the paleo group. It's like, is a banana paleo? And then somebody pops up, isn't there? There's always like 2 a day or something who've just discovered paleo. Oh, have you discovered banana pancakes? All you do is mix bananas and eggs and fry them up. And everyone goes, no, we've never discovered that before. Because it's like every other post. And it's so funny. And it's they don't think that in Paleolithic times, there's no bananas. There's just no bananas. In fact, there weren't any anywhere, because bananas are tiny and full of seeds, right? They're not in the natural environment.
Absolutely.
They're not even like bananas in the shops. So, yeah, nonsense.
So that's your guest. We've got a new guest waiting to come in. I don't know I don't think you should put a camera on yet. How would you like to sum up what you're offering people? Because you've got a lot of interest in the chat. You did a little bit about your big fat challenge, but just tell us a little bit more.
I think we offer something for everybody, because everything from people who are just trying to lose a bit of weight to people who are severely autoimmune, we've got in there. I think we've really over delivered with all the other kind of stuff, but I'm going to let Ben say exactly what's in there, even including our upcoming book that you won't be able to find anywhere else. So off you go, Ben.
Yeah. So really, we do two main things. We help people to retrain their thinking around food, which is a long journey to take, because we have been fed a huge amount of BS for our entire lives through every channel, even up to proper beard fiddling science and everything. It starts when you're very young, goes all the way through. So retrain your thinking around food, and we help you to retrain your habits, because it's not easy to do this. And in the context of family, co-workers and everything else, can you afford to eat in a species appropriate diet? Well, I'd say, can you afford not to? And in a lot of countries, if you factor in the cost of healthcare, then it becomes an absolute no-brainer. Now, but it's like a 13-week program. We take you through. You can dive in on day one and try and go do the full Monty immediately. That's absolutely fine. But we also include, for example, our forthcoming book, The Red Pill Food Revolution, that charts the whole history of our terrible relationship with our degeneration, the degeneration of the human condition with regards to food, and leading up to this kind of end game that we're in now. And that book isn't even out on sale yet, but you can get it in PDF and in audiobook formats as well. There's a bunch of other bonuses and stuff, but really we just set out to answer every single question, and we do. Everything from the health issues. Do you need fiber? Surely you need fiber. What about vitamin C? Aren't you going to die of scurvy? Well, no. All through to the environmental side of things, and even the ethical and spiritual side is stuff that's really, really important for people. Like Stephen just said, we're animal lovers, and we care very much about this. But we do believe that every single argument, every single objection out there can be answered fully. That's what we try to do to help people through and make it through successfully to the other side, and just realize a whole new level of health, energy, and well-being.